This recording it's for me. So, what's this recording all about? I want to talk about a journey with enlightenment, masters, and many, many lessons and understanding, and also some guidance from the inner silence, the inner consciousness. So, friends and viewers of this video, this is a reflection of my sannyas journey and how the unknown has worked with me and how I've grown through experiences with myself. Now, this talk will also highlight masters and teachers and things that I've come to understand on this path and that I stand for and that I don't stand for, and why. So, with great respect to my process, I am a student of life. My name is Leanne Campbell, with many names and many gurus and many occasions of meeting the divine within me and giving it names and direction and hearing the call of enlightenment and liberation and moksha. And this talk has to go around the meaning of good teachers and the meaning of the inner teacher and the paradox of it and the harsh realities that come with shadow work. So it's April 29th, 2025, around 6:21 p.m. And my most recent lesson is governing my path and my pathway to teaching and serving masters and serving people with what I feel the consciousness within me is guiding me to right action. And what that really means for my greater good and for the greater good of how I teach and how I share. So yoga, my journey from age 15 to 19 led me to my first samadhi, and the curiosity of the inner consciousness leading me towards a sacred path, a meditative path. Being born Catholic and having that already rooted with prayer on a regular basis, my childhood had many different traumas of force and disciplines, which both kind of found their way of acceptance. But a lot of more healing happened for me through yoga, through shedding my body weight into a conscious experience and experiencing. And part of my story I'm reflecting here, part of my story that I'm reflecting here has to do with some recent changes on my journey and new directions with right understandings with consciousness. And what does that mean? So after having my first samadhi at age 19, I had talked through this empty vessel of this gift of God within me that had connected with me to guide me, to seek teachers, to seek guidance in ancient wisdom, to understand what was happening within me, and to grow more knowledge. So through serendipity and synchronicities, I met other people on my path that had spent their journey with bhakti yoga. And that kind of opened up new chapters for me to be a student of the Vaishnava Sampradaya and ISKCON. That having its own karma with the teacher that I had found became a personal partner in my life that really wasn't following the right dharma. They were teaching something they weren't living. And so very quickly within the timeline of being with that person, I ran into troubles. I was young and I had to face a lot of traumas. Traumas I had already faced in my own family life, but new traumas outside my family life, which didn't feel right. So dealing with those karmas, I ended up being alone as a single parent in 2005 on a very significant day with patterns and patterns of unbelievable synchronicities and serendipities that were happening with me along my process of learning with ISKCON. And because of the trauma in family life, not only in my first family life, but in my second family life, I was on the road to recovery and healing. And the dynamics of being called spiritually through samadhi at age 19, I was aware that there was a greater power working with me and for me, but I was involved with a lot of karmas. And so, since I had already been through the lesson of the fluctuations of life, of the good and bad, and making the best of things, I still knew internally that there was a better way to live life, but I was on that seeking journey of what that really meant and what was seeking me. And so, shortly after those lessons with ISKCON, I also had run into more broken hearts and having children at a very young age that I had to face more of that serious um, hardships of losing everything, but still having strength to move forward because of beautiful synchronicities that did take terrible things out of my life also. So there was some amount of balance between the extremes and between the universal God forces. And I truly believe because when you're following the right principles, that things work for you, but karmatically, it's not always a nice picture. Now, this led me to also seeking more teachers to heal through that chapter and people and trusting. And I think a lot of spiritual growth. I don't think I need to judge myself for the amount of purity that I was purifying myself into higher dimensions of myself, but grounding that into a world of living a part of the world after having a lot of trauma happen to me. So, yes, I was seeking really good teachers. I was seeking more guidance of how to come through more lessons in life, the accumulated karmas, and the changes that rapidly happened by being a single mom with 2 kids. Trying to preserve some of that great wisdom and the life-changing alterations of ancient wisdom in a modern day sense led me from born Christian, studying Buddhism, moving forward into ISKCON, into Vaishnava Sampradayas, and then moving slowly into the world with the hunger for balance at that time. And that's where I stumbled upon Osho's teachings through friends, lovers, and suggestions that came to my life. And so, thinking that I had found, and I knew what I had found with Krishna, I was still a very neophyte devotee, secluded from the dharmas and being loved or being a part of participating with others because of the traumatic, toxic relationship I was in, that my story was very dynamic. A lot of the things I was attracting were the efforts I was putting in not to lose my connection with the divine and the divine reflecting what was happening inside and outside as a lifestyle. And because of this dynamic explosions in my life, meeting a dynamic master like Osho was, when I opened up his first book, it was kind of like I was reading about myself. And people had suggested to me, and it all made sense, which I had a lot of gratitude for. So then I started to go deep into that connection and to try to understand it. Now, at that time in my journey, I wasn't married. I had had kids. I wasn't properly nourished in a love relationship, neither in my childhood or in my adulthood, young adulthood. And the patterns of and cycles of abuse were always there amongst the natural ability of myself to be forgiving and loving because of my practices and my way of thinking and unconditional love that was taught to me at a young age. So, with all that being said, discernment, what they talk about in the Bible, and um, the natural rights and wrongs of family life, they had already been so polluted that I was in a very traumatic state in order to attract more teachings in my life and really need healing. Where I had met some lovers that didn't go right, but all the accounts of the lessons, there was that essence of a new teacher showing up in my life, like Osho. I had a friend come meet me one day, and then I saw this old man come out of his body with a long beard. And so I had been exposed to very strict disciplines in the Vaishnava Sampradaya, and then getting exposed to reality after that lifestyle and trauma in the wrong relationships, and then childhood trauma, that, what was real love about, or what was sex about, or what was family life about, I was still in that knowing that my Christian values were there, that things should be in order, even though my childhood had a lot of disorder. But the function of a mother and a father and children was just a natural conscious understanding that I believed was right and the right efforts. So with all that being said, and then being exposed to this dynamic process I then had gone through by seeing this Master Osho come out of my friend's body, and then meeting more people that talked about Osho through a lot of synchronicity and serendipity of connecting with others, I started to naturally go through his meditations. Now, that receptivity and that sensitivity and that psychic awakening that I had, nobody was teaching me about my Kundalini awakening. Nobody was teaching me that I had already opened up my third eye. I had to figure this all out for myself, being born in a Western society, and what that all really meant, and what was governing this body with wisdom. So, yes, a new teacher was there, and I was in a state of innocence and love and seeking answers. So, I started to study the work. I naturally started to embody the work. And then I started to go through the work by taking sannyas in 2011. And this talk is an important talk because my first awakening happened in samadhi directly with God, which is unseen. I've never met that. Other than in meditation, I've experienced a connection, or I've experienced the amount of light in my body, or I experienced seeing gods, feeling the power of the Holy Spirit, or seeing the manifestation of these gods before me in dream states or in a reality state come alive in a statue or in a picture. But yet the guidance and the deep nourishment of these paths weren't present in my life with teachings or what I feel would be a right guru to understand me, who really understood me. And so many teachers, many gurus, and that one chapter with Osho, that dynamic chapter, I look through my process of like honor and respect for all my masters and the teachers that appeared before me in a dream or appeared on my path to help me through my path. And Osho was one teacher that always taught me about to observe my breath and observe life, and that dreams are real. They had some aspect to it in categories of states of dreams. So I just started to see like where I would have dreams that were just related to things I thought about within the day, or things that felt like messages, or experiences that were higher than just a regular dream state, where either I was flying or I was meeting with enlightened masters, or where I was having many spiritual experiences. So this dynamic aspect of this idea about what Osho was, I started to study about his childhood. I looked at his books. I looked at being with many gurus and having many problems in my life with many things and having broken parts. But I really thought that he was genuine in his teachings from the things I got to study. I never had a chance to live with him or live in his ashrams, but I started to go through a ripple effect of whatever he had created, I started to become sensitive to. And so that started to help me, his dynamic work. My body would naturally go through it. I would feel rushes and floods of energy move through me and teach me through what he was teaching the world without even going through classes. And so when I started going to classes with Osho, it all started to integrate because what I was going through naturally through connecting to him, it started to happen more deeper with more awareness. And my stillness started to get more centered with his dynamic methods. So by taking that sannyas in that chapter of my life and in having that opportunity to face teachers and what India calls your gurus, I have a lot of reverence for that in my life, and I put my whole heart and soul into it. And especially when I become a good listener, that if there's something there that can serve the higher good of life and the people, and whatever I have that I'm learning, I love to share. And so Osho had said one very powerful thing on his journey of all the things I listened to from him was to help him live his dream by sharing his dream with others. And I genuinely felt through the transformation of seeing my mind for the first time in his dynamic meditation in 2011 that I had a breakthrough of the separation within me or the duality within me that I was able to observe, to truly observe. And that's why I love his work. But then over the years of practice and going out in the community, I found like his work was all spread so thin, and there was some idea of whether it was being done right or wrong, or that people were just trying to make everything work in like a hodgepodge way, but with a good intent, where I saw his methods be taught in many, many ways. But ultimately, the final teaching was pure observation and the observer and becoming the observer to life. So, over my journey of getting educated and thinking that if I want to do justice to the world and to offer something of knowledge based, science based, or things that are being shared internationally by the teachings of Patanjali or pure yoga or pure tantra, or the things that were being shared to me from Osho's community, I think would give it more roots so that I would be exposed to the science of it all and be a better teacher of the anatomy, the body, the breath work, the mastery of the grace of it all. And I really found myself falling into grace with Osho. Yes, I was traumatized. And yes, I was very, very, very lost in understanding the meaning of love after so many defeats with relationships and the simple disconnections with honor and value of a woman or a man. And I looked through the trauma of my life. I looked through the trauma of my childhood. I try not to point fingers. I try to accept. But love is natural. It's something easy to be loved, beloved. And Osho really had those teachings. He was calling everybody beloved, and he was sending out all the love letters. And most recently, from teaching in the community or believing in his dream, I also got exposed to the hardships of his experiment with life. And I knew that they were there, but I was kind of in a cover, in a mask in my mind through the rebellious side of him. And the consciousness inside me has two eyes about his life. One was the gifts that it gave me to reach myself in a centered state in meditation, with varieties of methods that helped me to overcome my mind and varieties of my mind. But then the duality of the missed service and the missed things that were done to children and to family life, and what he was really aiming at, I was kind of exposed to in a new way through knowledge and the lifestyles of other sannyasins. And also through the most recent awakening I have with Shiva Shakti. And because pure Tantra and the Tantra that he was teaching of Neo Tantra are two different worlds that need each other, I believe, to transform each other and to help the West meet the East, where we break down some walls of conditionings, but we do it in a loving way. And a lot of what was done in Oregon and the things that I've seen now sannyasins writing, there was a lot of injustice done in America while he was there. And there's a lot of leadership that he had that was toxic, as much as he was preaching the name of God and love. And so being a disciple or being somebody who was seeking sannyas from a lineage of Vaishnava sampradayas and broken parts of my life, I leaned into his sannyas life to teach myself many things and to be with somebody who had presented itself in my life as a gift and as a tool, which I call Osho's toolbox. And those meditations, the music, mathematics, and meditation, I think were very intelligently done. And the experiment that was done, I don't think was very intelligently done. But humans became experiments for his mindset and for the things that he wanted to master and play with life. And there's a lot of harm done that I now see, where I was looking on the outside of coming in as somebody who had been broken or rejected or harmed in relationships, to see genuinely that same harm that I went through in relationships was happening in his ashrams to people and by him leading it. And so the contradictions that are there and the contradictions of him talking about himself contradicting everything, I think is a weak approach to spirituality. I'm not a fan of that. I think that our consciousness is far stronger not to have to lead others through experiments to harm them further if we really have the end result to help them. And this is where I've gone full circle in my inner union with the marriage of Shiva Shakti and meditation. Trying to understand that in the last 4 years, amongst many karmas and distortions, like Osho's distortion and other distortions in my life, and the shadow effect, and the coming into clarity. And whatever he was trying to teach us with centering, what that truly means in the centering the union with Shiva Shakti, which they call a desh, an order. And I see that every human that I've met that are on their path with even Shiva Shakti are still just as human with the same faults and shadows, including myself. So that being said, admiring my teacher is really recognizing what the teacher was saying by discovering your own inner teacher. My respect for teachers is part of the process. Like I have respect for my parents. But also recognizing that they were human on their own experiment. And what humans can do to refine the experiments. I think he tried his best after he made several mistakes, but he had no choice other than to do that because whatever was pushed out into the world at the maximum explosion of experimenting and having humans being experimented with all of what they owned and what they loved and their family life, there was a lot of harm done from the outcome of what I can see now on social media. And for myself, what was I involved with to harm myself or my family? What I realized when I was in all of those teachings and also teaching in the community his work and coming into the consciousness that stopped me directly and showed me true love, which led me to Shiva, to recognize who Shiva is and his order. And what is the meaning of true love? What he's teaching Parvati. So with that being said, I'm coming through a phase of embracing and understanding the shadow work. I wasn't planning to do shadow work. I walked through it. And I've been through a lot of it. And I wasn't expecting to see the shadow of all my masters. But I think that's when all masters start to descend from our lives when we meet Shiva and Shakti. We will work on our own personal mastery. Now, going really fast and moving really fast through a lot in life or having many amplified aspects or experiences, we can feel lost when everything has to stop and shift. And that's kind of where I feel I got challenged. But the greater awareness that I have found dissolving into Shiva is knowing I'm not alone. I've always known I'm not alone. I've always known God is there. But I've met God and cosmic source energy in Shiva. And so I think that's where Osho was really trying to teach me, like he was saying, until you get it, you have really nothing to teach. And now I do. So I thank Osho for his part of my play. I'm wishing that the people that suffered from the experiment in a way that harmed their view on family life, that they find peace with that and they see the value of family life. And they learn some teachings from Shiva about the value of family life. And the hardships even Shiva is facing, because it's part of the creation. But how we can be the change as the Shakti energy. And I think this is my greatest lesson that I'm trying to speak through myself too and help the evolution of my own being, is to break through what I learned from Osho versus break down, take the good of what he taught, but not repeat the cycles of harm that happened to the family lives, but to teach the stillness of the pure observer of the Buddhahood in a family life, like Shiva did. And that's where the whole ball game changes for me, is choosing my path of sannyas. My neo-sannyas, they call it neo-sannyas, neo-tantra, a gateway. Osho was really the gate to show the rebellion, to show the catharsis, to show the mind empty and naked and raw, to challenge every concern that you could have in your mind possible in a reality sense, to transform into a being or a soul. Yet there are some conducts that were done which can't be erased for women that had to get sterilized or have to go through abortions. And knowing that I was abused through my relationships with men and knowing that sacred part of the womb, I'm ready to embrace how we can share Shakti on the earth in a better way. There's no meaning for the womb of a mother to be traumatized in any shape and form in the name of religion or spirituality. That's against the mother of all creation. And so that's why I will be shifting my approach to what I teach from Osho and continuing my path with Shiva and Shakti to utilize pure Dharma principles for the earth. I've been inquiring how I can teach best with Tantra and how I can teach best with yoga and how I can take these lineages that I've learned from and masters I've learned from, the best of the earth. And the only way best I can do that is to share these truths and continue to add to the good that they've done versus the bad that was done through all of my suggestions on ChatGPT, AI, and all these influences where I got consoled through universal things that are happening. I'm grateful for social media. I'm grateful for this opportunity to record myself. I'm grateful for seeing Shakti and Shiva expand through all cellular levels of opportunities for us to speak through and be the great humans of nirvana that actually Osho was trying to teach. Human to human, heart to heart. Those were the seeds that were planted into my heart from Buddha, right down to all the students of Buddha. And the blessings of Shiva, I hope, can come to the earth with more purification and awareness of the meaning of true love and being with family life. And that's my shift in consciousness. That's my shift of my knowledge, where I dropped some things of my neo-sannyas into the great sannyas of Shiva Shakti. And I thank Osho for his part of my journey. And I pray for him and his soul, for all the sadness or the broken parts that happen in his direction, for those people to be healed from that trauma. Because I know what it's like to go through that trauma. And I think that we're divine beings here to take care of the children. The children are gems. They're like Gopal, Radhe, Lakshman. Every child is a gift of God. But the teachings that Osho had on family life and the things that we do to each other, against each other in family life, I cherish those teachings. Because those things, as I've been in the community raising my children, have been good pillars. So I take the good, I leave the tragedy, and I move forward with Shiva Shakti. And likewise, there's much more to come. These are my talks. It's your girl, Leanne Campbell. I'm blissed out, the eternal connection, having gratitude for all the masters, and the letting go of the things which I believe need to shed. Har Har Mahadev, Jai Parvati Ma. And if you have any questions in regards to these thoughts or ideas that you have gone through yourself with Osho and the teachings, or any other guru disciple path, I will try my best to serve with the greater wisdom that I have embodied and plan to learn more about, and more and more and more that I can with Shiva Shakti. Har Har Mahadev.